The CDC has identified a case of coronavirus in Washington state, the Wuhan strain of this. If you remember SARS, that affected GDP, travel-related effects. Have you been briefed by the CDC?
I have.
Are there words about a pandemic at this point?
No, we're not at all, and we have it totally under control. It's one person coming in from China, and we have it under control. It's going to be just fine.
There are now 6 people in the U.S. infected with the fast-spreading virus.
The coronavirus threat is now a reality for one of Hollywood's most beloved couples.
62-year-old Prince Albert II of Monaco has tested positive for coronavirus.
We've got some breaking news to bring you, and it's to do with the Prince of Wales. He has tested positive for coronavirus.
And in another first for the coronavirus pandemic, a tiger tested positive for the virus at the Bronx Zoo.
The Diamond Princess cruise ship is carrying over 2,000 passengers as the coronavirus outbreak sweeps through the ship. It turns the luxury cruise liner into a floating prison.
I cannot believe one person can cause 600 and something odd people to get sick.
Also created a White House virus task force. It's a big thing, a virus task force. I requested $2.5 billion to ensure we have the resources we need. And so far, we have lost nobody to coronavirus in the United States.
At this moment, we have 22 patients in the United States currently that have coronavirus. Unfortunately, one person passed away overnight.
The death toll in the United States from coronavirus now stands at 22. 19 of those deaths are in Washington state, 16 of them linked to a nursing home in the Seattle area.
Americans should know that this is a potentially very serious public health threat. But at this point, Americans should not worry for their own safety.
On February 1st, the Surgeon General even tweeted, "Roses are red, violets are blue. Risk is low for the coronavirus, but it's high for the flu."
Despite the CDC's warnings, President Trump in India today downplayed the risk.
You may ask about the coronavirus, which is, very well under control in our country.
They met for 2 days last week and declined to declare that public health emergency of international concern. And now they are doing so.
The virus remains public enemy number one.
Following the World Health Organization's decision to declare the 2019 novel coronavirus a public health emergency of international concern, I have today declared that the coronavirus presents a public health emergency in the United States.
U.S. is closing the door to slow the spread of novel coronavirus.
And he then goes on to basically brag about it on Fox News.
Coronavirus, how concerned are you?
Well, we pretty much shut it down coming in from China. To keep new cases from entering our shores, we will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days.
From Dallas to New York to Chicago O'Hare, thousands upon thousands of travelers returning from Europe forced to stand shoulder to shoulder over the weekend for 4, 6, even 8 hours waiting to get through customs and newly required health screening.
It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear.
That stunning recommendation, the CDC now advising all events with 50 or more people, we're talking things like weddings and everything in between, be canceled for the next 8 weeks.
Nearly 200 dead, 14,000 who are sick, millions, as you witnessed, who are scared right now. What do you say to Americans who are watching you right now who are scared?
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.
Fast-breaking developments in the coronavirus emergency in the U.S. and around the world. The number of cases soaring just today, more than 24,000 now nationwide. New Jersey today becoming the 6th state to close all non-essential businesses, joining California, New York, Illinois, Pennsylvania, and Nevada. More than 80 million Americans now told to stay at home.
Thank you for joining us. And as we come on the air tonight, the number of coronavirus cases in the United States is growing exponentially. And the Surgeon General says it is going to get worse this week. More than a dozen states are now either ordering or asking people to stay home. School is now closed for 55 million children. And today, Virginia's governor called off school for the rest of the year. Stocks plunged again on Wall Street as senators battled over a relief and stimulus plan. And just moments ago, the president said that the country was not built to be shut down and hinted that he wants to find a way to get some people back to work, even as experts say Americans need to stay at home.
As of today, all but a handful of states have issued stay-at-home orders in an effort to keep people safe during this pandemic.
Nothing will stand in our way as we pursue any avenue to find what best works against this horrible virus.
This just sort of parlays into what we've been dealing with for weeks now, Diane, and it's mixed messaging, and it's the president not being on the same page as members of his task force, and it's been really hard to figure out what exactly is truth versus fiction. And so America was looking to this Oval Address last night just to quell fears and truly try to understand what's going on and how seriously the president is taking this, because he has been contradicting his experts time and time again and saying things like nothing is shut down, life in the economy will go on, this will just go away.
Shelves usually filled with paper products remain empty, and many stores continue to limit how much you can purchase.
This morning, lines outside a grocery store in Central Florida with anxious shoppers. For days, this has been the picture of America.
Tensions flared at Woolworths Chullora around 7 o'clock this morning when 3 women became involved in a toilet paper tussle.
The nation is being shortchanged with not enough quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies to go around.
The NCAA tournament has been canceled for 2020.
I think with the uncertainty, it's a good time to kind of disconnect and relax as well, and then, kind of slowly build yourself back up as, hopefully some positivity comes around the corner and we get some more news down the road.
Dad, no rule waiting in the house! No rule waiting in the house!
The 2020 Summer Olympics, now the latest major sports cancellation caused by the global COVID-19 pandemic.
For the first time since World War II, one of the most beloved tennis tournaments in the world will not be taking place.
Heightened states of emergency across the nation as a number of coronavirus cases soars above 3,000. Tonight, elected officials taking unprecedented measures to keep people safe. Illinois and Ohio closing all bars and restaurants beginning tonight. California shutting down bars and wineries and asking those 65 and older to self-isolate.
It further complicates the Trump administration's plan to urge Americans to wear face coverings in public, a move made after evidence showing infected people, even without symptoms, can spread the virus.
You can do it. You don't have to do it. I'm choosing not to do it, but some people may want to do it, and that's okay.
More cases of coronavirus, of course, continuing to explode. Stores, including Walmart, Sam's Club, Kroger, announced they will start requiring all customers to wear face masks nationwide. At one Walmart in Florida, okay, you watching? A man not wearing a mask, pulled a gun on another customer after he was confronted.
Amid the rapid spread of coronavirus, businesses around the world are closing doors and government officials are telling people to stay home. Meanwhile, Amazon faces perhaps its biggest challenge yet. The pandemic has triggered a surge in online orders so big it's hiring 100,000 new workers and halting the intake of any new inventory that isn't in high demand.
These potatoes aren't going to end up on your dinner table. Their final destination is this hole. We're in the small town of Sheridan, Montana, on a potato farm. Normally, this time of year, Bill and Peggy would be sending their potatoes to be planted. Instead, they're throwing away 700 tons.
Consumption of milk is way down because schools and restaurants are closed. We were there as New York State dairy farmer Patrick Grimshaw poured his entire production of milk for the day down the drain. He's done it every day for 3 weeks. Estimated loss, $90,000. It's heartbreaking. As millions of Americans lose their jobs and wait in line at food banks, farmers are destroying their crops.
Coronavirus outbreaks shut down meat processing plants across the U.S. Animals headed here were suddenly stranded here.
As time has gone on and plants haven't been able to operate, that's created a big backlog of pigs.
With nowhere to send their pigs, some farmers were forced to euthanize their herds.
The coronavirus pandemic caused an economic shutdown unlike the world has ever seen. The U.S. economy, which runs on oil, came to a halt as people followed orders to remain in their homes and not go into their offices. On April 20th, the effects of the pandemic forced crude oil prices in the futures market to sink below zero and into the negative territory for the first time in history.
Oil prices plunged into negative territory. The price settled at, get this, negative $37 per barrel, which is down 305%, meaning people would pay you today to take their oil off their hands.
We know the airline business globally. They have never seen anything like this, not even after 9/11. Airlines could lose $250 billion in revenue this year as travel comes to a virtual standstill. As Chris Van Cleve reports tonight, it is an industry that is now in free fall.
Stunning sights on airfield after airfield.
Restaurants in the U.S. are reeling from social distancing measures aimed to slow the spread of the coronavirus pandemic. The industry employs more than 15 million people in the United States, and many of them have either already lost their jobs or are worried about losing their jobs. Restaurants, large and small, are doing the best they can to navigate the economic shock brought on by the pandemic containment initiatives.
So the COVID shutdowns are probably the biggest existential crisis that this industry has ever faced.
The National Restaurant Association estimates that between March, April, and May of 2020, sales will decline by $225 billion.
To see how badly the U.S. economy is doing, all you have to do is look at this parking lot full of empty New York City taxis. Because of the pandemic and slow economic recovery, ridership was down over 90% last month. There are 15,000 taxis in New York City. 4 out of every 5 of them are parked because of a lack of passengers.
As I stand before you today, the risk of contracting the coronavirus to the American public remains low, and the risk of serious disease among the American public also remains low.
It will go away, just stay calm. We're in great shape compared to other places. We are in really good shape.
On March 26th, the United States became the epicenter of the COVID-19 outbreak, with more confirmed cases than anywhere else on the planet.
This was something that nobody has ever thought could happen to this country.
As of today, more Americans are dead from the virus than the number of soldiers killed in the Vietnam War.
The Trump administration has declared New York a major disaster. The state accounts for nearly half of the nation's reported cases of COVID-19. New York has become the epicenter of the outbreak in the U.S.
We are literally scouring the globe looking for medical supplies.
You picked the 26,000 people who are going to die because you only sent 400 ventilators.
I was told that the hospital typically has 50 ICU beds, and they've now got 200 because of all the conversions that they've done to help take care of patients in the current pandemic.
The frustrating thing about all of this is it really just feels like it's too little too late. Like we knew it was coming.
Today is kind of getting worse and worse. We had to get a refrigerated truck to store the bodies of patients who are dying.
The most heartbreaking aspects of COVID-19 is that when patients enter the hospital, they are cut off from their loved ones. And if the patient dies, he or she dies alone.
Almost every other call is a COVID-19 positive.
This is a battlefield, and we've turned ourselves from nurses into soldiers.
Every day when I go to work, I feel like a sheep going to slaughter. My colleagues and I are writing our last will and testament. I'm 28 years old. We fear that we may not survive this pandemic, and yet we show up every day to this hospital to take care of our community.
All the patients that initially came in 4 or 5 days in, they're all, to put it in clearest way, they're dropping like flies.
He says almost all of the patients he's seen on ventilators have died.
This afternoon, I invoke the Defense Production Act to compel General Motors to accept, perform, and prioritize federal contracts for ventilators. Ventilators are a big deal.
I'm Dr. Bill. I'm as patriotic as the next guy, but I read today they're going to have the Blue Angels and the other Air Force flying wizards fly over many cities for the healthcare workers to show their support. It costs $450,000 per flight over a city. So if there's two of them, that's $900,000. You want to help healthcare workers? These are the goddamn N95 masks that we have to deal with. These are painters' masks. Get us equipment, get us PPEs, get us N95 masks that worth anything. Get us tests for everybody.
With a global shortage of masks, it was a stunning sight. The FBI found a Brooklyn man hoarding over 300,000 masks and nearly 600,000 gloves.
In the cascading shortfalls of the national response to coronavirus, testing labs across the country are sounding the next alarm, telling CNN there are shortages, not just in tests, but the components needed to conduct the tests.
President Trump discussing the major failing that everyone has heard about in the U.S. Trump administration coronavirus response thus far, the testing. The U.S. has been lagging far behind many other nations, including South Korea. Donald Trump very clearly not taking responsibility and going further to say it's not his fault.
Data from the U.S. Labor Department shows 6.6 million American workers filed for unemployment benefits last week, the most ever recorded. That brings to 10 million the total number of people who filed over the past 2 weeks.
The Senate finally passed this massive $2.2 trillion relief bill. It is the biggest in history, and to give you an idea of just how big, that's about 10% of U.S. GDP. These direct payments to millions of Americans that you have heard so much about, $1,200 a person, $500 per child, $350 billion for small businesses, and $500 billion for critical industries like hospitals.
Twice as large as any relief ever signed. It's $2.2 billion, but it actually goes up to $6.2 potentially trillion dollars.
The coronavirus pandemic is quite possibly the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. More than 36 million people have claimed unemployment benefits, and that's probably a gross underestimate of the total job loss.
I don't think there was anything that would prepare us for this, right? This is just so out of bounds.
This has never happened before in the history of the United States.
Unemployment insurance was established as a counter-cyclical stimulus for times like these. However, despite a generous federal stimulus package, many state systems are failing. In March, just under 9,000 of the nearly 400,000 applicants in Florida received initial benefits. At best, states delivered aid to about half of their applicants.
Today, we reduced the target range for our policy interest rate by 1 percentage point, bringing it close to zero, and said that we expect to maintain the rate at this level until we're confident that the economy has weathered recent events and is on track to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals.
Coronavirus pandemic has impacted just about every sector of our economy. On Friday, we heard from the Commerce Department that retail sales fell by the most on record, down more than 16% for the month of April. And this weekend, JCPenney announced it would file for bankruptcy.
This has been an unprecedented year for corporate unraveling. Never before have so many retailers and healthcare companies gone bankrupt in such a short time. Every sector has gotten hit, from the beaten down shale patch to airlines to sports leagues.
Just a devastating indicator of how painful this pandemic has been for the U.S. economy. We just learned this morning U.S. economic growth shrank 32.9% in the second quarter. That is by far the largest quarterly drop since record keeping began in 1947.
Let's get to the big news. Overnight came another move by the Trump administration, to your point, Joe, to strike down Obamacare in the middle of a pandemic, amid the surging coronavirus pandemic and record unemployment.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson is tonight in intensive care
at St Thomas's Hospital in London, suffering from the effects of coronavirus.
Whoa, that was so surreal, walking into the NHS Nightingale Hospital, which, when it's finished, will be the biggest hospital in the world.
It's just disturbing to hear. Dr. Anthony Fauci, a key member, you might even say the leader of the White House coronavirus task force on many days, he is now facing death threats.
This morning, the U.S. hitting another grim milestone, surpassing 5 million reported cases of COVID-19.
That hospitals are so overwhelmed in one county in southern Texas so that doctors have to choose who to send home to die.
And then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number of the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me.
Let's start with the surge of the coronavirus across the country in recent months. You still talk about it as, quote, burning embers. But I want to put up a chart that shows where we are with the illness over the last 4 months. As you can see, we hit a peak here in April, 36,000 cases.
It's cases.
A day.
Yeah, cases.
Then it went down, and now since June, it has gone up, more than doubled. One day this week, 75,000 new cases, more than double.
Chris, that's because we have great testing, because we have the best testing in the world. If we didn't test, you wouldn't be able to show that chart. If we tested half as much, those numbers would be down.
But this isn't burning embers, sir. This is a forest
no,
fire.
But I don't say. I say flames. We'll put out the flames, and we'll put out, in some cases, just burning embers. We also have burning embers. We have embers, and we do have flames. Florida became more flame-like, but it's going to be under control. It could have been stopped right where it came from, China. If we would have known about it, if they would have known about it. But now the whole world almost is inflicted with this horrible virus, and it's too bad.
December.
Strange pneumonia cases reported.
Roger that.
January.
We discovered a new virus.
So what?
It's dangerous.
It's only a flu.
Wear a mask.
Don't wear a mask.
Moments ago, President Trump departed the White House for Walter Reed Medical Center after testing positive for COVID-19.
One person coming in from China, and we have it under control. It's going to be just fine. Ultimately, I'm always right.